What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So, looks like we had actually some more word from Nintendo about censorship and kind of their stance on it. They talked a bit about this at their annual gathering of the shareholders, so we're going to go over that a bit here. We also got a message from the Pokemon company and Masuda himself, and I question if they actually had to put a message out. We're going to go over all of that and why that message has done nothing but just make the Pokemon fandom even matter, it seems, online. So we got quite a few things to go over here, guys. If you missed it over the weekend, had some fun, took a look at Super Mario Maker 2 and kind of gave my impressions on it and thoughts on how much from what I've played from it so far. Did the podcast, and we also talked about a pretty cool little accessory that turns your Switch into a mini arcade cabinet. Make sure you check those out if you missed it. As always, guys, enjoy these videos. Make sure you are hitting the like button. It does help out, and get subscribed as we do all this gaming news and everything. Keep you up to date on the world of gaming throughout the week at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you hit the little notification bell as well to keep up to date. Make sure you get those notifications that you've already click to be notified for. YouTube's weird. I don't know what to say there, but today we're actually going to start with some quick news. We're going to actually start with Panzer Dragoon because we saw, of course, the remake. It was revealed in Nintendo's Direct, and all we heard was, I guess, winter time. At least that's what was going around from some listings that popped up. However, Sega Bits is reporting at this time that it could be up until March 2020. So we're expecting it before March 2020, which, I mean, I guess winter technically goes, up to that point anyway. So sure, why not? The other interesting thing, though, is that it appears there will be a physical copy, but it will release later, mostly because Forever Entertainment technically needs to make sales, I guess, before the physical copy can become a thing. I know we get kind of annoyed about that, hearing that a physical copy will come later, so we may have to double dip, but that just seems to be the reality of some of these smaller creators and publishers and everything putting these games out there. But to hear Panzer Dragoon on a cartridge for the Switch is pretty cool. So even, I'm going to buy it when it shows up, obviously. I think a lot of people who remember Panzer Dragoon will, because it's like a full-on remake, it looks like. But most people will also buy it physically for the collection either way. Also, Halo Reach is technically in like their testing stage. I guess you'd call it a beta, but they're not really calling it that. They're calling it like fights and everything. But of course, Halo Reach going to the Master Chief Collection on the Xbox, and it's also going to the PC where they're going to have the Master Chief Collection. That's the first one. Apparently it's going to show up there, and then the rest will follow, I guess, after that in like chronological order. But they decided to choose some insiders to take a look at this thing. They call them like, they're Windows insiders, Xbox insiders, Microsoft insiders. But they chose just under 1,000, it looks like. So not even 1,000 people got a chance to play this thing. But it didn't stop people from leaking it online. In fact, the Halo Reach testing phase seemed to leak online to PC players. And 343 was not happy, saying that they were ready to ban any and all people who were accessing their servers illegally, as they say, banning accounts, all kinds of stuff. So I wonder if that means that the games you have tied to your account would also become inaccessible. I mean, if it's part of their services and conditions or terms and conditions and everything, I mean, I guess they have you there, so I'm curious how many people actually got banned from this, but it seemed to be a big enough issue where they had to make a statement. But yeah, people want to play Halo on PC. Yeah, go figure. We also haven't really talked about the UK sales charts much this year so far, and that's because not as much stuff was happening. We talked about, of course, some of the bigger releases with Resident Evil, Kingdom Hearts, and even Days Gone, as that actually topped the charts, which surprised a lot of people. But now we have Super Mario Maker 2 showing up, and that has now become the best-selling Nintendo game in the UK this year, which might not surprise as many people because the one before that seemed to be New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and well, that tells you all you need to know there for this year. But of course, now we're getting into some of the bigger releases showing up for the Switch, and I do expect that to just start to climb after that. And Super Mario Maker 2 is going to be big. It's already really big online. Everyone's playing it. Everyone's sharing levels, which is really, really fun. But to see it topping the charts there, knocking Crash, actually CTR, which is obviously a game I'm playing a lot of right now, knocking Crash Team Racing out of the top spot is pretty big, as Crash is a good selling series in the UK, but it looks like Super Mario Maker 2, at least for now, is taking the top spot. We'll see what happens next week, but keep in mind, this is only tracking Friday and Saturday. We'll see what happens when it gets a full week in that second week to see how well it does there as well and see if it can keep that top spot. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're going to start with the Pokemon Company right away because they made a statement and it didn't go over well with fans. I'm actually going to show you the statement right here. This they actually posted on Pokemon.com, their full blog and everything they have where they can post up stuff. This was actually there, and this is what it had to say. Thank you to all of our fans for caring so deeply about Pokemon. Recently, I shared the news that some Pokemon cannot be transferred to Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. I've read all your comments and appreciate your love and passion for Pokemon. Just like all of you, we are passionate about Pokemon, and each and every one of them is very important to us. After so many years of developing the Pokemon video games, this was a very difficult decision for me. I'd like to make one thing clear: even if a specific Pokemon is not available in Pokemon Sword and Shield, that does not mean it will not appear in future games. The world of Pokemon continues to evolve. The Galar region offers new Pokemon to encounter, trainers to battle, and adventures to embark on. We are pouring our hearts into these games, and we hope you will look forward to joining us on this new journey. And that's from Junichi Matsuda himself. And this didn't go over well. The reason it didn't go over well is because if you actually read that, it doesn't say anything. In fact, they probably didn't have to make this statement, and nothing would have changed. In fact, actually, they probably would have made fans less angry, because what this says here is that basically nothing's going to be changing. Originally, I said, hey, it'd be good if they had a patch, right? Because it sounds like they're running into release and they're just not going to have the time to do it. It's just not going to work out, right? They've made it their decision. They probably made this decision, to be honest, like 2 years ago. Like this was something they made up when they started development. They said, look, we cannot get all these Pokemon in here for whatever reason. I don't know. I wasn't at the meeting, but for whatever reason, it's not happening. And a lot of people are, of course, speculating as to why if these Pokemon are not there. Do they really not have the resources, despite being like the biggest, what are they, biggest grossing revenue in entertainment or something? It's Pokemon. Pokemon is this massive IP. You figure they could do that, but what's going on in the back end? That's something none of us really know as to why. What's the core issue? I think the biggest issue, me personally, is a deadline. They can't delay this thing. There's too much stuff around it outside of just the video game, whether it's anime, merchandise, all kinds of stuff is happening around this video game, and it all has to happen all at the same time. Still though, there are some fans that are just not happy that something like the National Dex is not available here, as in you cannot bring Pokemon outside of Sword and Shield into Sword and Shield, even after you beat the game and you've completed it, where you have the regional Pokemon, and then you actually get to bring in Pokemon from outside of the game. And it doesn't necessarily have to have, I guess, a Pokedex number, entry, or anything. You can still bring them in, but they're not doing that. And this, of course, led a lot of people saying that Game Freak is lazy, and it's not helping the cause when you see trees that look like they're from the GameCube version. You see animations don't look great, and you see their reasoning shift to all different things, whether it's, they said the animations will be too difficult to do in time and get it done to a high quality. They've talked about how, the Galar region might not support all the different Pokemon with its conditions, whether it's too cold or whatnot. There's a lot of weird reasoning, and it keeps shifting around. It really is hard to say as to why they're not doing it. I don't think individual developers there are lazy. I don't think that's a thing at all. I think you have people working there, and I'm not talking about the people at the top, people at the bottom, who are sitting there probably day in, day out, 70, 80 hours a week. Trust me, we've talked about crunch before, working like crazy to try to get this done. I do think there is a level of comfort right now at Game Freak, though. I've talked about this. I think they're very comfortable. And what they've said here in this statement, and this is going to be very interesting when this game releases, they've basically said, people are going to buy it anyway. That's essentially what's being said here. They're saying, hey, look, we couldn't do it. Deadline coming up. Better luck next time. I think what's going to happen here, though, because they're transitioning from the 3DS to the Switch, as they go through new entries, more and more Pokemon will become available, and that Pokemon Home will continue to work going forward. Like Pokebank, I guess, but Pokemon Home will continue to work going forward, and I think eventually we'll get to a point where all the Pokemon are compatible, and you will be able to bring them into the next entries. This is like their first shot, I guess, on a home console, technically, with their mainline Pokemon series, outside of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but even that didn't have nearly as many Pokemon. And the other thing here is we don't know all of the information about this. How many Pokemon are actually going to be in Sword and Shield? Because if they say there's 300, that's going to cause some issues. People aren't going to be happy. But if they say like 500 or 600, I think some people will pull back a little bit, because they realize that there are still a lot of Pokemon here. But of course, that also means that your favorite's not guaranteed. So we're going to have to get the release date. We're going to have to see what happens here. And then I want to see the sales, because a lot of people aren't happy right now. But I do question the willpower around not buying Pokemon when your friends are playing it and you're into the competitive scene. What happens then? Let me know down below if you are someone who's not happy and you're definitely not going to buy it, or are you not happy but you're still going to buy into it because you really like the Pokemon games and you want to keep up with your friends who are playing. Next up, let's talk about Google Stadia. It's already rubbing a lot of gamers the wrong way with what they're trying to do here, and it's not getting any better, it seems, as several places started reporting, including Eurogamer and others, that games will be full price. That's right, you will have to actually pay full price for those games that you want to then stream. So let's say you have, of course, the Pro membership, which is $10 per month at 4K 60. Then you also have to, on top of that, buy the $60 games. Now, some games will be part of that subscription model, like Destiny 2 that we've seen, of course. That's just going to come with it. So when you get your Founders Pack thing that you paid $130 for, Destiny 2 will be in there. So that's cool. I mean, they were giving that game away at one point anyway at Best Buy, but hey, it comes with your Chromecast. However, having to pay $60 for a game that you never actually own. However, I guess if you buy a digital game, you technically don't own it either. But this is one where it's streaming, it's all reliant on the internet, and to have to pay for a game full price, whereas I think some people thought it might be a bit cheaper, is probably a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. I looked at this, and if you go back on some of the podcasts, I said I think the games are going to be full price. Turns out they will be. And I'm gonna be curious to see how that goes over with gamers who wanna try this out. Will they be willing to spend $10, or I guess stick with the free one, but then also fork over $60? Will there be sales? Will there be discounts? That's the big question. Can they get people in with lower prices as opposed to those higher $60 prices from over time? But let me know what you think about a $60 price on a game that you're streaming. Next up, let's talk about Sonys strategy going into the PlayStation 5, where of course, we're thinking end of 2020, we're gonna have a PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Scarlet on store shelves ready to buy, although they'll probably sell out and then they'll restock them, then they'll be ready to buy. But Sony appears to have a strategy in mind that, to be honest, sounds exactly like their strategy for the PlayStation 4, but the Wall Street Journal still reported on it, saying that Sony was going to be focusing on hardcore gamers. Again, sounds similar to what they're doing with the PlayStation 4. They're going to focus on timed exclusives for different games, whether it's DLC for Call of Duty, for example. Again, stuff they're already doing now, and that they would be focusing heavily on graphics for their next generation system and their games. Again, what they're doing now. In fact, everything that they talked about just sounds like the same stuff they've been doing that worked very, very well on the PlayStation 4. However, Microsoft kind of stumbled out of the gate and I think stubbed their toe to the point where Sony just ran forward and just won by default. I mean, seriously, I do wonder if we go back in time and Microsoft was able to offer a similar service or platform like Sony did, if they would have really been that far behind right now. And that's going to be the interesting thing going into the next generation, where Microsoft, who does not have that emphasis on their box as much anymore as trying to reach everyone, will it just be the same thing all over again? Because then, yeah, why would Sony do anything different? But hardcore gamer, heavy emphasis on the graphics for a game, and then time DLC seems like a winning formula for Sony. So yeah, sounds like they're gonna do it again, which I think it'll work out. They also don't really view Nintendo as a straight up competitor, which Nintendo doesn't really view Sony as a straight up competitor. So I think they're both ready to just kind of live next to each other in the marketplace, as they both offer exclusives on their platforms. It's just Nintendo's gonna work on the hybrid functionality and Sony's gonna work on the 8K graphics, apparently. And our last bit of news, we'll talk about Nintendo and censorship. If you've been keeping up, it seems like Nintendo is not interested in censoring any third-party games. In fact, they seem to welcome any of the edgy or kind of out there games. And a lot of them, I will admit, I don't really get into or play or anything, but I do see that there is value there for people who enjoy them. And of course, Nintendo's not really interested in censoring those games. They just want to leave it up to the ESRB or other places. And they were actually asked at their gathering of the shareholders about their stance on this. I think this is kind of important to some of these shareholders to see where Nintendo is going, as they want as many games as possible on the system, because of course then Nintendo can collect fees and all kinds of stuff from these third parties as they sell. This is actually what they said. Nintendo, as do third parties, and their software applies for an objective rating from third-party organizations prior to release. If platform holding companies choose arbitrarily, the diversity and fairness in game software would be significantly inhibited. We provide parental controls that can be used to apply limits. And that is, of course, from Shintaro Furukawa, who answered this to a shareholder at their meeting. And this is the exact answer I want to see. I wish Sony had this same stance. Sony is weird. They censor strange things at times, whether it's suntan lotion in, what was it, Dead or Alive. The Extreme Beach Volleyball thing, they censored that. They've changed entire titles, entire box art. They've done all kinds of stuff. They've actually been the reason XC doesn't have to even delay an entire game. Whereas Nintendo just doesn't seem to care. They say, hey, you want to put your system on here or your game on our system? Yeah, go for it. We don't really mind. And this is the right answer. Let the ESRB rate it. If it's adult rating, you're probably not going to let it on your system, and it's not going to sell in retail stores anyway. Most of them will go for mature rating. If it does get a mature rating, there you go. It's fine. And as they say, we have parental controls. They're your kids, manage them essentially, right? It's if you don't want your kids to play a mature game, set up the parental controls and they can't play above teen then. It's actually not that hard to do. You can play around with the parental controls, you can change all kinds of stuff. It's all there if the parents want to actually listen. I know Sony is trying to censor for the children, but they're parents for that. So like give them the parental app, show them how to use it, and at that point, it's up to them. And we'll finish up today with our comment of the day. As you're seeing here, this one's from Katie Bennett saying, I agree with you that GameStop should focus on retro games. It's always frustrated me that it's only mom and pop stores that are willing to take the chance on them. It would help their fan base and bottom line considerably. I think there's a lot of trust that goes into retro games, whether it's taking games in and actually appraising them correctly, right? Is it complete in box, or does it just have the box? Does it have the manual? Is the game look good? How's the label look? You kind of see what I'm saying? It gets into this point where you have to be a collector almost to be able to appraise it correctly. And there's so many games, there's so many systems, there's so much stuff to look for that I almost feel like GameStop isn't even willing to pay the people behind the counter enough to make it worth their while to learn all this stuff, because they just might not care. If it's not in the system, we're not taking it in. But then that means that someone might walk away with like Lufia 2 on the Super Nintendo because it's not in the system and they cannot appraise a game in the box with the manual. Do you see what I mean? I think there's just so much stuff that GameStop is trying to figure out how to do it without them sending it back to the warehouse so that GameStop can appraise it. But if they can figure it out, there is a massive market there for them to tap into. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go to here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's full price Stadia games, how do you feel about that? The message from the Pokemon company that seemed to make all the fans mad all over again. Do you think they would have been better just not saying anything? Because I kind of feel like they shouldn't have. They should have just kept moving along until release day. And then also, what do you think about Nintendo, Sony, and their censorship, with Nintendo seeming to take the stance of, hey, they're your kids, we have a parental app, and we have the SRB. We'll let all of them take care of it. We're just here to provide the platform. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.